many lands should you play inside a cEDH deck? Well, that's a tricky question to answer, but I have been trying to figure out a data statistical number on stacks and counterspells and kind of found an answer in previous videos, and yeah, you have the result here. I will leave links to those if you want to understand why and how I reached that number. Mostly finding and utilizing data from various different tournaments, but trying to figure out how many lands you should play to achieve the most optimal win rate is tricky using this place. Instead, I have resorted to watching 401 cEDH games on YouTube, calculating the cards they play, turn order, and also their deck lists, as we can find them down here, and then just writing in the value. By the way, I'm not counting 25, I'm counting 27, so there is a Sink into Stupor and Hydroelectric Specimen inside this build, increasing the land count from 25 to 27, which gives us a dataset that looks like this. So here we have game 305 from Double Sleeved MTG, player 1, player 2, player 3, player 4, and you can see all here a title called lands. That's how many lands I counted inside their Mox Field deck list. And we also have winner here. So in this case, player 3 won, which was Mike on Vile Smasher, Malcolm and such, who played 27 lands. And that gives us this answer right here. So from 401 games, which by the way contains 4 players, so the player count in this is 1,204. No, that's bad math. 1,604, sorry. And we are separating them into winners and losers. So the winners' average land value of those 1,604, which makes it 401, because 25% of that is 401, is 27.87. And then the average land count losers is 28.21. So the losers are playing a little bit more lands compared to the winners in average. But the difference is so small that the p-value up there is not statistically significant yet. We should also point out that some commanders have more lands than others because of reasons. You see, we can namely be a little bit more specific. Here we're doing a cutoff range. For example, we have excluded 150 players, not games, players, that had lands lower than 15. Those actually exist. There are some weird players that enter into games with 13 lands in their decks. Yeah, those exist. And there are some people who have more than 30. However, the range now is closer. As you can see, obviously we're cutting off like a lot of those decks that contain 50 lands, we're getting to those. But the winner count still plays a lower amount of lands compared to the loser count, it's just that they are closer now compared to before. So 27.87 to a 28.81 to something like difference close lower than 0.15 suddenly. But we need to be a little bit more specific, because some commanders obviously need to play more lands than other commanders, and maybe the better pathway forward is to answer this question to each commander individually. And we need to begin with Lumra, because this is a commander that plays a high amount of lands. As you can see, we have 15 games entered with Lumra. By the way, you can see the win rate of Lumra on 20% from those 15 games. Huge remark here is that the winners have played lower counts of lands compared to the losers. Then we have the Gitrog monster, another big boss. Here's actually something... Okay, so I should just mention that don't look at this, because the player count is only 8, so it doesn't actually... The numbers aren't trustworthy, basically. But I'm just showing you that there are cEDH builds that contain a high amount of lands for specific combo reasons. So let's look at something that is more common and average. We have Kinnan with 55 games, and average land count among winners is 26.94, and average land count among losers is 26.74. So that is like very identical, regardless of if you're a loser or winner. You have basically kind of played the same amount of lands. Sure, you could say that the winners have played maybe one more land, but the difference here is so small that it is not a determinant terminating factor. In other words, if you like increase your land count by maybe a few, might not matter. However, the total games of Kinnan is still very small, so it's hard to say. However, you're seeing something like the lands Kinnan play is around 27. And we can go commander after commander. Here's my favorite one, cEDH, 62 games, average win rate 29.03. You're getting something of a commander leaderboard here, kinda from YouTube games only, by the way. And the amount of games is very small here, so don't take the win rate as a certainty, by the way. But you can see here that cEDH is on average playing a little bit more lands than Kinnan. Something around like 29, you could say. And it doesn't really matter if you're a winner or loser, you're still kind of playing 29 lands. For us to find an answer to how many lands you probably should play inside cEDH, we need to have a bunch of players basically playing 35 lands in cEDH and see if they are winning a lot or losing a lot, and then have a bunch of players playing 20 lands and see if they are winning a lot or losing a lot, and then we can start to see like if that has a determining answer. But it looks like the popularity vote on the player community playing cEDH is that they have found 29 lands to be the mark. Kenrith is sitting on 28.5, so something like a little bit less than 29 lands for Kenrith, with a win rate of 25 from 16 matches, so not a certainty. Atraxa is sitting on average land count 27.33. Italy, 33 games and a win rate of 36.36. I would like to point out once again that it's a very low sample size, so don't take the win rate as a certainty. I would actually say though that I think that Italy is really good. Been playing Italy myself, watched, as you can clearly see here, a lot of games where people have been playing Italy, and it seems to be doing some really powerful work once you resolve your commander. It's quite often that it wins on the first resolution, because you just find a pathway forward to just keep looping Italy infinitely, or not infinitely, but enough times to basically figure out a victory path. Land count wise, it seems to be around 28. Glarb is sitting on a similar value, also 28. Hashaton, a new commander, 30 games and a win rate of 16.67. I've actually made a video where I said Hashaton is not performing that great, and I promised that I would continue to showcase how that tournament win rate is updating, and I would like to point out that once again, the sample size of 30 games is very small, so don't take the win rate here as a certainty. However, that win rate up there is identical to the tournament performance of Hashaton. To prove a point, here's Hashaton's win rate from tournaments. And as you can see, from 199 tournament entries, it is sitting on a 14.65 average win rate. So in this case, I actually do trust the 16.67's win rate from YouTube games. In other words, it's a struggling cEDH commander, you could say. Corvold is sitting on something like 27 average lands, a very high win rate but a very low game count of only 14. Nayela is sitting on 28 lands, win rate from 49 games, 28.57, so she seems to be doing good inside YouTube games. Obnixilis, now we're actually starting to see a few commanders that are dropping their land count a lot. Obnixilis is down to 20. Let's go 26. Very high win rate, but a very low game count of only 15 so far. Then we're seeing a jump. Lumra, 31 lands, on the other hand, only 6 games so far. Tivit is sitting around 28 lands, a very high win rate, by the way. And I believe Tivit is going to be doing pretty good in the upcoming futuristic pathway forward of this meta, as Dockside have been banned. Yuriko Tiger Shadow is sitting on 27 lands on average. And then we have Rogsai, 30 games and an average win rate of 30. So from 30 games they have won 10 and lost 20. And that's good, but a very low game count to say for a certainty that this is a trustworthy result of their win rate. Land count wise, they have 23.78 and on the loser end 24.24. So it looks like the winners had an average lower land count than the losers. It's not statistically significant to determine that that was a factor into ensuring that that is having a huge impact in the win rate, but basically the popularity vote on Rogsai players is that you should be playing a very low land count. Another new upcoming ROG combo with Thrasius, the Gaia's Cradle Storm version, have 26 matches, and it's been kinda growing. They have received more and more matches compared to the start when I began collecting data for this. The land count is around 28. And lastly, the most played commander pair I have in my dataset is Thrasius and Tymna TNT, with 72 matches and an average win rate of 33.33. So they are doing good. They are winning games on YouTube, and they are sitting on an average land count of 27.33 on the winners, and the losers 27.52. So you can kind of see that the winners are playing a little bit less lands than the losers. However, the difference isn't that huge. They are around 27 to 28. In the end, you might want to land on 27 if you're playing TNT, you could say. So that was a lot of techno babble. What would it really get out of this in the end? Short answer, there's a lot of different commanders out there that should play a lot of different amount of lands in general, but an overall pattern in general is that the more lands you remove, the win rate increases a little bit. There's a chance that if you remove too many lands, you might drop your win rate. However, if you're playtesting your deck goldfishing and figuring out that you can make land drops regularly and still perform really good, then it should be fine. Because there are cards that basically draw so much cards that you're going to find your land drops even though your land count is really low. For example, Rhetoric Study. From 131 games, they have an average value across all players of 10.35 cards drawn in each match. And an average value for winners are 11.33. That means that if you had a Rhetoric Study and you won the game, on average you drew 11.31 cards. If you had a Rhetoric Study and you lost, in the end you drew something around 10 cards. So with Rhetoric Study, you can basically get the land drops you need to play a really low land count. The same can be said with Mystic Remora. As you can see, however, the difference is pretty big. It's drawing half the amount of land cards compared to a Rhetoric Study. So if you resolve a Mystic Remora from 156 games, on average you're going to draw 6 cards that game for that. I was just about to say 1 blue mana. You're not paying 1 blue mana for a Mystic Remora, you're paying a little bit more down the road. And eventually you're losing it because you can't pay it anymore. So Rhetoric Study definitely draws like double the amount of cards compared to a Mystic Remora. While the One Ring is on average going to draw, well actually here you can see a big difference, because if you had the One Ring and you were in a losing position, average value for others is 4. So if you lost the game with the One Ring, you usually drew 4 cards with your One Ring. If you won the game with the One Ring, instance of winning players 44, average value for winners 8.68. So you're drawing around almost 9 cards with the One Ring if you won with the One Ring. And this is going to also help you find those land drops that you need, which allows you to play a lower land count in general. So it comes a lot around to how you are building your deck to make the low land count sometimes work. That being said, back to the dataset, there's something I would like to show you. So here we have game 104, and it ended on turn 4, winner by player 2. And if you go down here to player 4, this was Noctis, Prince of Lucius. He has down here land drops 2, while we have Dylan, player 1, on land drops 3. So Dylan played 3 land drops that game, and player 4 played 2 land drops. While the winner, as you can see here, winner player 2, Zach on Vivi, played 4 land drops that game. And this was a turn 4 game. This means that player 4 missed 2 land drops and player 1 missed 1 land drop. What I'm trying to scout at is this. Can we see a pattern of if more land drops equals into more wins? It probably should, right? However, I would like to make a confession. I only have 31 games where I've started to imply this method. In the beginning of this dataset, I didn't count land drops, but as I've been calculating more and more data, I started to realize that this is probably something I should add to the concept too. So sadly, we can't say anything yet from this, but I'm showcasing a potential for the future. There is a small indicator here. For example, average land drop by player 1 is 3. Average land drop by player 2 is 4.5. By the way, if you do a pre-game Gemstone Caverns, that does not count as a land drop. Then player 3 has 3.9 and player 4 has 2.6 on an average land drop. Then we can separate this into turns. So 0, 6, 6, 9. So let's focus on these two, because game 5 is like maybe land drops didn't have that huge effect anymore. If we focus on turn 4 games that ended, we have 9 of those that ended on turn 4. We have when the player 1 was the winner, they had an average 2.67 land drops, and when player 1 was a loser, they had 3.17. And when player 2 was the winner, they had 4 average land drop, and when they lost, they had 3 average land drop. When player 3 won, they had 3 average land drop, and when they lost on 3rd position, they had 2.43. And a pattern here, even though like player 2 has more land drops when they win compared to player 1, they still have a higher land drop count compared to when they are losing. Once again, the sample size is very small, so don't take any of this as a certainty. It should also be pointed out that if player 1 won the game, player 2 can't make the 4th land drop here. That is why we're separating this into turn count. But I predict that once we get more games ending on, let's say, turn 7, which we don't have any yet, on this calculation method, I believe we're going to see that having land drops continuously throughout the match might improve your average win rate when the game goes longer. While I don't think it's gonna have a huge impact when game ends on turn 2. Which is literally why Rogsai play a low land count of around 24 or lower. These two, they don't plan to go to turn 3. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you got something out of this video. It's hard to say, but like the big and small only takeaway is that try to figure out how to reduce the land count in your commander regardless of whatever commander you play. Try to understand a natural feeling. The best ultimate goal is to reduce the land count as much as possible. Including more card draw will allow you to play a lower land count naturally, and depending on how long you predict your commander needs to go, if you believe that I'm usually winning around turn 4, you might need to increase your land count a little bit more compared to a commander that is usually winning around turn 2. I'm really bringing game-breaking knowledge here. But the data supports somewhere around that the winners in general from YouTube gameplay have been playing a little bit less lands compared to the losers, because when you drop the land count, you can increase combo potential, tutors, interaction, and such. Take care guys, and I'll see you in the next one.